10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
In the United States.
Okay, well, I was just a youngster during World War II. Of course, being born in 1934, and the war started in earnest at Pearl Harbor in 1941 when I was only 7 years old. My parents would read the newspaper, and I would hear what they were reading, and they would talk about where battles had been taken place, especially in Europe. They covered the news pretty well in Europe, didn't cover what was going on in the Pacific Ocean as well, and when it did, it was just, well, they've landed on Tarawa or some such thing, but was aware of all of those things. There were a lot of changes that everybody had. There was rationing on almost all important items. Gasoline was rationed. You only could get so much. Butter was rationed. In place of butter, they developed margarine. Margarine came in a whitish block, looked like the shape of butter, but it was whitish, and you got a little yellow capsule that of plastic encapsulated. If you wanted to make it yellow, you could mix it up.
Trans fats.
And it would taste something like butter, but it really wasn't butter. Had coupons to be able to allow you to buy so many of each thing that was rationed.
I remember Mom talking about that, sharing stories with us about you know, Grandpa working at the newspaper and some of the stories that she had she used to talk about the Depression.
The war did end a lot of the unemployment. You know, there was substantial unemployment that occurred from the early 30s because of the Depression, and it went on and on and on. And it was really World War II that brought the United States out of it. The government didn't do a particularly good job of taking care of the economy in the United States back then. They claimed to, just like they claim to now, but they're not doing a good job.
Yeah, there were Hoover bills back then.
Hoover went into it. He got the blame for it because he was the last president before it hit.
Miley!
She hits. Sure. Give us an overview of your life and how you became the man you are today.
We should have started with that question.
Born in 1934, Springfield, Ohio.
Oh my gosh.
Dorothea Gladys Huber. At the time, was married to Walter Vincent Gregg. I don't remember too much about the first few years.
Tell them what you remember first.
I was originally named after my biological father. But he left after about a year, I gather. I don't know, again, don't really remember all that. And my grandfather, Simon Wade Huber.
Did you ever meet
Listen.
your real dad?
Never saw him.
Never, so never.
Never saw him.
And
Never
he's-
heard from him. I did hear from my paternal grandmother, Margaret Gregg, who was in Pennsylvania. She would send me birthday cards and Christmas cards, and I'd send her.
How about the time when your mother dropped you off at kindergarten?
Oh, yeah. I must have been a poor kindergarten student because I went 2 years to kindergarten.
Or you were really good at it.
Actually, she needed a babysitter because she was working. So this fine day, they dropped me off, and it was very quiet around Washington Schools, the name of the kindergarten. So I go up to the door and pull on it. It doesn't open. And I look around. By then, my mother's gone. So I sit there for a while, and nobody ever comes. Well, I guess they're not going to have school today. But I happen to know where my grandmother lived, and it was only about a half mile away.
And you were in kindergarten.
In kindergarten. So I walked to my grandmother's house. She was a little surprised to see me.
Probably looked for your mom, too.
I think my mom was a little surprised to see that I wasn't at the school when she went to pick me up.
Or nobody else.
Oh my.
And there were no cell phones then. I didn't even worry about that. But that all worked out well. I got my rice and raisin dish with my grandmother because my mother Dorothy was. The same was true with my cousin Lee. He's a year older than I. And one of the reasons we stayed there is because my grandmother and grandfather's last child was Bill Huber, and he's only 3 years older than I am. So we're all three kids, so to speak. Well, I think I was about 6 or 7 when Lee and Uncle Willie, as we call Bill, always had fun things to do. This particular day, the rain had ended, and Bill said, "Let's go down to the river and make a raft." There's a river that goes right through Springfield, Ohio, called Mad River, M-A-D River. So we all went down, and there was a nice wooded area that was part of a cemetery with lots of trees and shrubs and bushes and all sorts of things. And of course, Bill is the one with the axe. So he proceeds to find a lot of down trees, and he chops off lengths of them, and he peels bark back from other things. And we must have worked there for 2 or 3 hours putting this raft together. Then he says, "Okay, it's ready. Mikey, get on the raft and we'll put it in the river." "I'll help and we'll all get on once it's in there." Okay. It sank. Disappeared. Darn.